You know, after years on that bench, people always assumed I was built from granite, unshakable, no nonsense, completely unaffected by the storms that passed through my courtroom every single day. And most days, they weren't wrong. I built my name on seeing through the noise, on saying the thing others danced around, on running a courtroom where games and manipulation simply did not survive. I was proud of that reputation. I still am. But there was one Tuesday morning in April that quietly cracked something open in me that I never saw coming. Something I wasn't prepared for, and something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. A little girl walked into my courtroom holding her father's hand, and she said 4 words that stopped me completely cold. She said, "My daddy cries every night." And I, Judge Lauren Lake, a woman who has faced some of the most emotionally charged, gut-wrenching cases in television history without flinching, who has sat across from heartbreak and injustice and kept her composure, went absolutely silent. I want to tell you exactly what happened that morning, because this is a story I've been carrying for a long time. It's a story about love, about struggle, about what it means to keep going when the road gets narrow and the weight gets heavy. And it's a story about what justice actually looks like when you strip away all the formality, all the procedure, all the pomp, and get down to the raw, human truth underneath. Before I go any further, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because the stories I share on this channel are not the ones you'll find anywhere else. This is the real work. This is what the cameras don't always capture. Stay with me. I spent years in family court and on the bench before television ever found me. Years of witnessing humanity at its most exposed, most vulnerable, most real. Custody battles that tore families in half. Abuse cases that made your stomach turn. Families fracturing under pressure, and occasionally, beautifully, improbably finding their way back to each other. People tend to think courtrooms are cold, sterile, clinical places, and honestly, many of them are. But mine never was. Firm? Absolutely. Direct? Every single day. I don't have patience for nonsense and never have. But cold? No, never cold. I knew from early in my life that I wanted to use the law not as a weapon, but as a tool, the most powerful equalizer available to us as a society. The idea that the law, applied correctly and with integrity, looks a wealthy person and a struggling person in the eye and treats them with exactly the same measure of dignity and fairness. That idea lit something in me that never stopped burning. My faith has always been the anchor beneath everything I do on that bench. It reminds me, every single morning before I walk into that courtroom, that every person standing before me carries a story I haven't heard yet, that every life has weight, that the robe I wear is a responsibility, not just a title. That particular Tuesday morning, I had a full docket ahead of me. Routine matters, traffic violations, small civil disputes, parking infractions, the kind of cases that people on the outside dismiss as minor, trivial, not worthy of real attention. I never dismiss them. I never have. Because here is what I learned early in this career and never forgot. To the person standing in front of you, nothing about their situation is minor. It is their life. It is happening to them right now. And they came here because they believed, on some level, that someone would actually see them. I was working through the morning when I came across one file and paused. A man named Daniel Reyes. 3 unpaid parking violations. Same street, always Tuesday or Thursday mornings. $45 each, $210 total with accumulated fees. On paper, it was entirely unremarkable. But I have spent enough years on this bench to know that patterns are never accidental. That particular pattern, same block, same days, week after week, told me there was a story buried underneath those citation numbers. I made a mental note, and when his name was called, I was already paying attention. He walked in. Young man, early 30s, lean, with that particular kind of tiredness around the eyes that doesn't come from one bad night's sleep. It comes from months of carrying something heavy without putting it down. He was wearing a button-down shirt that had been carefully, deliberately ironed. I notice things like that. The effort people make to show up with dignity, even when everything around them is fraying at the edges. I have always noticed that, and I have always respected it. and he was holding the hand of a little girl. She was maybe 4, maybe 5 years old. Dark, curly hair pulled up with a yellow hair tie, little sunflower on it, bright and cheerful. White dress with small blue flowers. She was pressing a stuffed rabbit to her chest like it was the single most important object in the universe. And she was looking around my courtroom with those enormous eyes, wide open, taking everything in, not scared in the slightest, just deeply, genuinely curious, like she had arrived somewhere interesting and intended to study it thoroughly. I've had children in my courtroom before. It happens more than people might imagine. But something about this little girl made me stop before she said a single word. It was the way she was holding her father's hand. Not the way a frightened child clings to a parent for comfort and safety. She was holding his hand the way a protector holds on. The way someone holds on when they are the one doing the steadying. This tiny person in a sundress with a stuffed rabbit and a sunflower hair tie had walked into my courtroom to take care of her dad. I saw that in 3 seconds, and something in my chest moved in a way I wasn't entirely prepared for. I said, "Good morning. You're Daniel Reyes." He said, "Yes, Your Honor." And he looked me straight in the eye. I appreciate that more than I can say. Don't come into my courtroom and stare at the floor like you're ashamed of being there. Look at me. Show me who you are. I said, "And who is this?" He looked down at her and he smiled. That particular smile that only a parent has, the one that breaks through even when everything else is hard, even when you're exhausted, even when you're scared. He said, "This is my daughter, Sophia." I looked at Sophia and said, "Good morning, Sophia." She looked right back at me, very seriously, with the full weight of her small dignity, and said, "Good morning, Judge," like she had rehearsed it, like she understood this was important business, and she was prepared to conduct herself accordingly. I heard that little ripple move through the courtroom, that small, quiet wave of warmth that moves through a room when something unexpectedly real happens. Even my courtroom softened for a moment. Even the people who had been waiting impatiently with their own problems smiled. I looked back at the file. I said, "Mr. Reyes, 3 violations, same block, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Talk to me." He nodded. He said, "Your Honor, I park there twice a week because it's the closest available spot to the school where Sophia has her therapy program. She has a speech delay. The program runs 2 hours and 45 minutes. The parking limit is 1 hour. I cannot leave her in the middle of a session. That's not something I'm willing to do. The garage is $12 each time, and I can't absorb that cost. I've spent time looking for another solution. There isn't one." I put the file down. "You stay the entire time?" I asked. "Yes, Your Honor. I wait outside. Sometimes in the car, sometimes on the bench near the entrance, whatever the weather is. And work?" I said. He paused. That particular pause people take when the honest answer is a hard one. He said, "I was a line cook. The restaurant I worked at closed 3 months ago. I've been doing grocery delivery when I can get shifts. I'm trying. He said it quietly. No performance attached to it. No carefully rehearsed appeal for sympathy. Just a plain statement of fact from a man who was running out of runway and hadn't allowed himself to stop moving. I know that look. I have sat across from it more times than I can count, and it has never once stopped meaning something to me. That particular combination of exhaustion and determination, of a person who is almost out of road but refuses to acknowledge it, has always moved something deep in me. And then Sophia tugged on her father's hand. He looked down at her. She looked up at him with those enormous, serious eyes. And then she looked straight up at me. No hesitation, no self-consciousness, no filter between what she felt and what she said. Just complete, unguarded, absolute honesty. She said, "My daddy cries every night." Let me be clear about something. I am not a soft touch. I am not the kind of judge who tears up at every heartbreaking story that walks through the door, because heartbreaking stories walk through every day, and you would never function if you met each one without your footing. I have been called tough. I have been called relentless. I have been called direct to a fault. I have sat across from devastation and kept my composure because composure is part of the service I provide. But those 4 words from that little girl reached somewhere that nothing had reached in a very long time. I took my glasses off. I set them down carefully on the bench. I pressed my fingers against my eyes for just a moment, because here is the truth about children that I have known since my very first years in family court. They don't know how to lie about what matters. They simply haven't learned how yet. Sophia wasn't running a strategy. She wasn't trying to manipulate the outcome. She didn't even fully understand the weight of what she was doing. She was telling the truth the way children tell it, completely, cleanly, without apology or calculation. And the truth she was telling was about love, about watching her father carry something enormous and heavy night after night, and wanting someone in a position to help to actually know. She had walked into a courtroom full of strangers and said the truest thing she knew because she loved him and she wanted someone to understand. Now, if this story is already reaching you, and I have a feeling it is, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from, because I genuinely read every single one. And I promise you, you do not want to miss what happens next in this story or what's coming on this channel. I looked at Daniel Reyes. He was looking down at his daughter with an expression I have seen only on parents. That specific expression where love and pain share the same face at the same time, where you are undone by how much this small person sees of you, by how little you've been able to hide. He reached down and gently placed his hand on her hair and said softly, "It's okay, Maija." I cleared my throat. I said, "Mr. Reyes, you are carrying a great deal right now." He looked up at me. His jaw tightened slightly. That thing people do when they have decided, absolutely and without negotiation, that they are not going to fall apart in public. He said, "Yes, Your Honor, but we're going to be okay." And I believed him. Not because the situation was easy or because things were going his way, but because I could see in the way he stood, in the way he'd shown up in that iron shirt, in the way he'd been sitting on a bench outside that therapy center twice a week in every kind of weather. I could see that he was the kind of man who would make it true through sheer, quiet, unannounced stubbornness. I looked at the file. $210. People hear that number and think nothing of it. For some people, it is genuinely nothing. A minor inconvenience, an annoyance to deal with on a Tuesday. But I have sat across from enough human beings in enough circumstances to understand that numbers are not equal. For a man piecing together grocery delivery shifts to keep the lights on and the refrigerator stocked and the therapy sessions happening, for that man, $210 is not a fine. It is a month of groceries. It is his daughter's shoes for the next season. It is the precise difference between keeping things together and watching something important start to slip. My belief, rooted in my faith and in everything this work has taught me, is that the law must serve people. Not statistics, not dockets, people. The moment the law stops serving the human being standing in front of it, it stops being just. It becomes something else entirely, and I have never been willing to be part of that. I looked at Daniel. I looked at Sophia, who had located something absorbing on the far wall and was studying it with complete dedication, rabbit tucked under her arm, utterly unbothered by the proceedings happening around her. I said, "Mr. Reyes, I have been on this bench a long time. I read people quickly. It's a skill this work requires. And what I see standing in front of me is a man who is doing everything right in a situation that is doing everything it can to make everything wrong." He pressed his lips together. His eyes went bright. He nodded once, just once, controlled, holding it together. I said, "The fines are dismissed, all 3 of them. Every single one." The sound that moved through my courtroom in that moment, it was an exhale. The entire room breathing out at once, that collective release that happens when something lands the way it was always supposed to. When justice and humanity meet in the same moment and everyone present can feel it. Daniel looked at me and I watched him try to find words for what he was feeling. He opened his mouth, closed it. He blinked several times, and the jaw that had been held tight with such discipline softened. He said, "Your Honor, I don't know how to thank you. I said, "Don't thank me. You go home and you take care of that little girl. That's all the thanks I need." And then Sophia turned from whatever had so thoroughly captured her attention on the wall, looked up at her father with her serious face, and said, "Daddy, is it good?" He laughed, a real, full, from-the-chest laugh, the kind that only comes when genuine relief finally punches through the wall you've been holding up for months. He scooped her up and held her against him and said, "Yes, baby, it's good." She patted his face with her small hand, deliberately, gently, like she was making sure he knew she'd hurt him, and said, "I knew it." I looked down at my papers. I needed a moment, and I was not going to give that courtroom the satisfaction of seeing exactly why. My clerk slid a tissue onto the bench beside me without a single word. After all these years together, she simply knows. That is the mark of someone who truly understands you. I watched Daniel Reyes walk out with Sophia on his hip, her little legs swinging freely, her rabbit flopping along in her grip. And I sat there and I thought about every parent I had ever seen in a courtroom. In family court, in my own courtroom, in the thousands of cases that have passed through my life. Every parent carrying weight they never asked for, fighting for their children with every resource they had, and then going home when the day was done and falling apart quietly in the dark, when the child was supposed to be asleep and no one was supposed to see. The afternoon continued. More cases, more people, more stories. But no matter where I turned my attention, I kept coming back to those 4 words. My daddy cries every night. Then, around 2 o'clock, a young woman appeared. Her name was Angela Moretti. She had a parking ticket, but my clerk had flagged her file. She had additional information she wished to present to the court. She stood before me and said, "Your Honor, I'm Daniel Reyes' sister." I put my pen down. She said, "I was in the courtroom this morning with my nephew. I'd brought Sophia in because Daniel was retrieving the car from the garage. I heard everything. I heard what Sophia said. And I came back this afternoon because I cannot leave this building without making sure you know who my brother really is." I said, "Go ahead." She said, "Daniel has been raising Sophia alone since she was 18 months old. Her mother left when Sophia was diagnosed with the speech delay. She couldn't face it. She walked out, and she has not come back. Not once. Daniel has done everything himself. Every single appointment, every therapy session, not one missed in 3 years. He reads to her every night without fail. He taught himself the therapy exercises so he can practice them with her at home on the nights between sessions, because he decided that 2 sessions a week wasn't enough if he could do more. He cuts the crust off her sandwiches because she doesn't like the way they feel. He finds the butterfly clips for her hair because she is passionate about butterflies, and he will drive to 3 different stores to find them. She paused and steadied herself. He never tells anyone how hard it is. Not me, not our mother, not a single person in his life. He just does it. He just keeps going. But Sophia hears him at night when he thinks she's asleep. She is not asleep. She hears him. And she walked into your courtroom today to try to help him because that is what he has taught her, by example, every single day of her life. That when someone you love needs help, you show up. I didn't say a word. I just listened to every syllable of it. Angela said, "I'm not here to contest my ticket. I'll pay whatever it is without question." I came back because this morning, when Sophia said what she said and I saw your face, I saw that you understood. But he deserves to be fully seen. He has been invisible for so long. He has been doing extraordinary work in complete invisibility. And I needed someone with the authority of this bench to know his name and know what it stands for. I took a slow breath. I said, "Your ticket is dismissed." She started to thank me and I raised my hand. I said, "Your brother is not invisible. Not to that little girl, not to you, and not to me. You go home tonight and you tell him that. You look him in the eye and you tell him he is doing an extraordinary job. You tell him that the matter he was worried about today is no longer his concern, and you tell him that someone in this courtroom sees exactly who he is." She covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes filled completely. She nodded. She said, "Thank you, Your Honor." I said, Thank you for coming back. That took real courage, walking back into a courtroom when you didn't have to. I want you to know that meant something." She smiled through her tears, gathered herself, and walked out. My clerk set a fresh cup of coffee beside me without a word or a look. That is the mark of a person who genuinely knows you, who understands when you need something and when you need silence, and who provides both without being asked. I sat with it all for a long time after the room settled back into its regular rhythm. There is a quiet heroism that exists in this world that almost never gets named. The people who rise before the sun, who show up every single day, who do the hard thing and the right thing and the thankless thing, and receive no headline for it, no ceremony, no recognition. They just keep doing it because the alternative is unthinkable, because someone is depending on them, because love doesn't give you the option to stop. If you believe those people deserve to be seen, if that idea resonates somewhere real inside of you, subscribe to this channel right now, because that is the entire purpose of what we do here. Real people, real stories, real justice. Don't miss a single one. A few months later, I ran into them at a community event, the kind of unexpected, unplanned encounter that feels like something more than coincidence. Sophia had grown, not just taller. She was talking more, a lot more, with confidence and animation and that particular energy of a child who has discovered that her voice works and that people lean in to hear it. Her sessions were producing results. It was written all over her. She spotted me from across the space and came running without a moment's hesitation. She called out, "Judge!" like she had been expecting me, like this was simply the natural next thing that was supposed to happen. I crouched down and said, "Sophia, you look absolutely wonderful." She said, "I know," with such total, calm, unshakable certainty that I laughed from somewhere deep in my chest. A real laugh, the kind that surprises you. Daniel walked over and shook my hand and told me things were going well, and I could see it before he said a word. He looked different, rested, present, lighter in a way that was visible from across a room. The particular exhaustion that had lived in his face that April morning was gone. Not erased, exactly, but replaced by something steadier. He told me Sophia had recently been evaluated and that her therapist had used the word remarkable to describe her progress. He said the word slowly, carefully, like he was still in the process of learning how to hold it without dropping it. I said, "She is a remarkable kid." He said, "She really is." I said, "She gets it from somewhere." He looked away for a moment, cleared his throat, said, "I'm working on deserving that." I said, "I think you are considerably further along that road than you realize. I think you have been for a while." We said our goodbyes. I watched him walk away into the crowd with Sophia skipping beside him, telling him something at length and with great passion, her hands moving through the air to illustrate her points. He was listening to her with his complete, undivided, full-hearted attention. Not the divided attention of someone whose mind is in 3 other places, just fully, completely there, present in the way that matters most. I stood there after they disappeared into the crowd, and I stayed with the moment for a while. This work, the real work, not the television cameras, not the public recognition, not any of the trappings that come with a long career, gave me something that no title or award ever could. It kept me connected to human life in all of its forms, across all of its seasons, the struggling and the striving, the falling and the finding of the strength to get back up. The moments when people reveal who they truly are, not in prepared statements or rehearsed presentations, but in small, unguarded, irreducibly real moments. Like a little girl holding out a worn, well-loved stuffed rabbit across a judge's desk because she wants to share the very best thing she has with someone who was kind to her father. People have asked me over the years whether I was too hard, whether there was a softness missing, whether the sharpness came at a cost. Here is what I know to be true. Being fair and being compassionate are not opposites. They never have been. The law must have a spine. I have provided one every single day I have worn this robe. But a spine without a heart is just a stick. It doesn't stand for anything. It doesn't serve anyone. Justice, real justice, sometimes looks like a man being truly seen by another person who has the power to help and who actually chooses to give a damn. That is what happened that Tuesday morning in April, and I have never forgotten it. I don't intend to. If this story meant something to you, if it brought someone to mind, someone in your own life who is carrying weight quietly, who shows up every day and does the work without ever asking to be recognized for it, share this with them. Let them know they are seen. It costs nothing, and it means everything. And if you are not yet subscribed, do it right now. I have more stories from that bench, and every single one of them matters. Every person behind, every case number matters. That has been true every day of this career, and it will be true until the last day. I'm Judge Lauren Lake. I show up to this work. I have always shown up to this work because I believe in one simple, enduring, unshakable thing. The law belongs to everyone. Every person who walks through those courtroom doors, rich or poor, put together or barely holding on, seen or invisible, deserves to be heard, understood, and treated as a full and complete human being. That is what makes this work matter. That is what makes it worth it, every single time.